Competition Amendment Bill is seeking to introduce a new threshold that we are popularly calling the deal value or the transaction value threshold, and that is applicable where there is a transaction that exceeds 2,000 crores of value, which is equivalent to 250 million US dollars. If there is a transaction which exceeds this number, and if a party to such transaction has substantial business operations in India, then you need prior clearance from the Competition Commission of India before you close your transaction. Obviously, what is central to this entire deal value threshold is the definition of substantial business operations in India. How that is defined is something that will play out only once we see the regulations that the Commission has been tasked to formulate, and that is going to be after it consults with all of the stakeholders. It is critical how this local nexus sort of a test is defined, because that will really determine the number of transactions that will attract CCI scrutiny. Another important aspect to note is that this transaction value test is in addition to the existing 8 asset and turnover based thresholds that already exist in the current framework. The need for a new test was felt based on various counts, but it is chiefly driven by the fact that the popular notion is that the true competitive significance of an entity can only be gauged by the revenue and the asset size of a company. But that has changed dramatically over the years, and we find that there are a lot of non-profit generating companies also that are commanding enormous valuations. So it was felt that there is a need to design a new metric that can attract scrutiny of transactions or merger of parties where a competitive harm probably is apparent, or there is consolidation happening in the market, but those parties do not necessarily meet the traditional asset and value threshold. The test is designed as a sector neutral test in that it will apply regardless of the industries the parties operate in. But speculation is rife that they are targeted at probably killer acquisitions in the tech space, where we have seen a number of large tech companies acquiring smaller startups who have come up with an innovative technology. But that's really not how the law has been worded, and we think that there could be increased scrutiny with this new threshold being introduced even in other sectors, especially pharmaceutical and infrastructure, apart from just the technology and digital space. The current iteration of the draft uses the expression an enterprise which is a party to the transaction may have substantial business operations in India. So if you just look at the bare text of the current bill, it seems to suggest that any one entity which is a party to the transaction, if that one entity also meets the criteria of substantial business operations in India, then the test is going to be, the threshold will be met. Which means that all the parties to a transaction need not necessarily have to meet the substantial business operations test. The bill provides some guidance on this aspect, and what it says is the value of the transaction will be every valuable consideration, whether direct, indirect or deferred, in relation to an acquisition, a merger or amalgamation. Prima facie, it appears that even transactions where there is a part component of part payment of by cash or by stock, all of these elements will have to be considered holistically and cumulatively to arrive at the correct deal value of the transaction. Similarly, there are a lot of transactions where the consideration is staggered. So at least for now, the expectation is that all of those considerations upon achievement of the relevant milestones will have to be seen in a cumulative fashion to arrive at the correct number. But of course, deal making has become very, very complex and dynamic, and there could be situations where guidance of the Commission will be required. And apart from that, generally speaking, the Commission, it is likely, will come up with regulations to also render more guidance on how the valuation of, or how the deal value is to be computed.